This video segment deals with special cases of the BHR mental health evaluation. There are a couple of different options on the MHE other than the initial evaluation that is completed for a new client. These special cases will be discussed in this video segment. Options for the MHE include aborted limited, a short update, a special version, and long update. So let's take a look at the aborted limited MHE. There are times when a client is uncertain about counseling and makes a decision during the assessment that they do not want to proceed in the treatment. Or perhaps a clinician determines that due to severely limited cognitive capacity or other extenuating circumstances, the client will not benefit from therapy. In the event of the clinician's uncertainty as to whether or not the client will benefit, but feels it's worth attempting, a statement can be included in the assessment narrative to indicate that fact and the designated treatment trial period of perhaps a month or so, after which a decision could be made about continuing with therapy. In such an instance, the MHE would be completed as usual with the client moving into treatment. But for this example, we will assume that for whatever reason, the MHE will be designated as aborted limited and that the clinician will not be moving into treatment with the client. Typically, there's some information gathered on the client in the course of the assessment process leading up to the decision not to proceed in the treatment, and this should be documented in the aborted limited MHE. Doc Tracker will prompt you to enter all the information gathered once the aborted limited option is selected for the eval type. And that information that's entered will be stored and available on an MHE worksheet that can be retrieved for this client should they ever return to treatment. Before answering yes in the pop-up box, complete as much of the evaluation as possible, including the recent relevant history narrative. Once you answer yes in the pop-up box, the tabs will change as shown above. And you'll complete the information in each of the tabs as much as you're able to. And be sure to complete the information in the aborted tab to indicate why the evaluation could not be completed. So make your selection from the drop-down menu. Also indicate the dates that the client was seen and add any additional clarifying information as deemed necessary. Finally, spell check, proofread, and validate the aborted MHE, and you'll be prompted to complete a status change form. So moving on to the short update. When in the course of treatment, a change in diagnosis is necessary, a short update will be initiated so that the change in diagnosis will be documented. A short update document is automatically created when the treatment note, which indicates that the diagnosis will be changing, is written and validated. To access the MHE update document, select the client from your drop-down menu of active clients. Choose the edit view for the MHE, noting that there is a red N to indicate the existence of an unvalidated document, which in this case was automatically generated by Doc Tracker. Doc Tracker will automatically date the document the same as a treatment note that indicated the need for the change in diagnosis. And as indicated, this is going to be considered a short update, and Doc Tracker will automatically indicate that this is the case when this assessment document is generated. So note that the tabs on the short update are somewhat different from those on the initial MHE, although they require familiar information to be entered. So this information up towards the top is automatically populated. So we'll indicate the date, type, how long you've been in treatment with this client, the treatment frequency, and so forth. And also will indicate what the previous diagnosis was. Then in the narrative on this tab, the clinician will want to outline the recent relevant history to support the need for the change in diagnosis. And that'll include a brief discussion of each of the identified symptoms in the narrative to help the reader understand more about a given symptom and how it is experienced by the client. Moving to the next tab, the current information tab, input information about meds, and for children only, information about out-of-home placement if that's applicable. The next tab is the Assess Assets Needs tab, and you're going to input information about the client's current assets and needs. These may not have changed much from the extended history document, but still need to be completed and updated. Next is the Diagnosis tab. Select the updated diagnosis from the drop-down list. Next, select MH symptoms icon and select the appropriate symptoms from the pop-up box, holding down the control key to select multiple symptoms. Next, you'll select mental health specifiers icon and select the appropriate specifiers from the drop-down menus in the pop-up box. And note that there may be a couple different options there that are highlighted, and you need to indicate each one that is appropriate. Add any additional diagnoses as needed and select the MH specifiers as appropriate in the same way as for the primary diagnosis. Next, complete the information fields in the top part of the treatment tab as appropriate. So you're going to indicate that you're a candidate for ongoing or continued treatment. The type of service generally is individual. CPST recommendations, expected frequency and duration of the sessions. And the duration is typically automatically populated, assuming the client does accept moving into continued treatment, and then any additional recommendations. And this box here that's indicated would only be checked if the client moved or passed away immediately following the update, and you would choose the appropriate disposition code. Finally, at the discretion of the clinician, an optional assessment summary narrative tab is included, and that can be completed to provide a case summary if this is deemed necessary. So after having input all the relevant information for the MHE, you need to spell check the document and make necessary corrections. And then proofread, and you're proofreading to look for good sentence flow and syntax, punctuation, and to identify any repetition of thoughts and ideas that may need to be rewritten. And finally, you will assure that the narratives in the recent relevant history and what is shown in the summary of primary mental health problems paragraph on the Update tab are consistent and coherent. And once you're satisfied that there is consistency, check the indicated box. And at this point, the document's completed and should be validated. As a final check for the content and form, it's suggested that you print the document and do a final review and proofreading of the printed document. So once the updated MHE is completed, you can complete the updated ISP and wellness plan. That procedure is discussed in a separate video, as the updated ISP is the same as the initial, or at least the process for completing that. There is no need to complete an updated extended history. So moving on to the special version of the MHE. Note that the special version is only used by a certain limited number of staff, and it's not used in the normal course of the average clinician's work. As such, no additional detail for completing this version of the MHE is provided here. And looking at the long version, the long update. There's no current use for the long update version of the assessment and is likely to be eliminated in the future. So this concludes the presentation on the special cases of the MHE for the BHR version of DocTracker.